tomb of the starving, entombed alive. Beneath the shadow of medieval walls and stone keeps, there were punishments so cruel they were spoken of only in whispers. Death was not always granted by blade or rope. For some, the sentence was slower, darker, and far more terrible. These were the condemned of the tomb, those walled alive into chambers of stone, sealed away from light, air, and mercy. Here, they were left to starve, rot, and vanish into the silence of their own graves. The practice was older than kings and queens. Roman soldiers had known of it. Priests of forgotten cults had done it in shadow. By the Middle Ages, it had become an art of cruelty, used by lords, bishops, and abbots who wished to make examples of the wicked without the spectacle of blood in the streets. A heretic might be spared the flames, but not spared the slow agony of starvation in a chamber beneath a monastery. A noble traitor might avoid the axe, but his last days would be spent clawing at stone in the darkness of his own tomb. The condemned were led in procession to their place of torment. Sometimes it was an empty crypt, hollowed beneath a church and stripped of coffins. Sometimes a tower's lowest chamber, bricked over until no light could seep in. Sometimes a pit, dug into the earth and sealed with stone slabs until the weight above crushed all hope. The ceremony was deliberate. Priests marched with candles, their chants echoing down the stone corridors. Monks swung thuribles of incense, as though the sweet smoke could mask the cruelty that was about to unfold. The condemned, bound in chains, staggered as guards dragged them to the chamber. The crowd followed, their eyes gleaming with cruel curiosity. At the threshold of the tomb, the prisoner was cast inside. Some begged, some wept, some screamed curses that echoed endlessly in the vaulted spaces. The priests would not hear them. The masons stepped forward with trowel and stone, sealing the mouth of the chamber with fresh mortar. Each brick set into place muffled the cries, until only faint sobs and desperate pounding could be heard. And then silence. Inside, the air was thick and still. At first, the darkness blinded. Hands reached for walls, fingers scraped across damp stone. Nails split as they clawed at the mortar in vain. There was no food, no water, no comfort. The body became an enemy. Thirst cracked lips, hunger gnawed at guts, muscles weakened, and madness took hold. Some prisoners screamed for days, their voices hoarse, echoing back to them until their own words mocked them. Others prayed until their minds broke, convinced the walls were alive, whispering the names of the dead. Rats came, gnawing at their toes, crawling over their still-breathing bodies in search of scraps that did not exist. The worst was the silence. In the darkness, time dissolved. Minutes bled into hours, hours into days. The prisoner's heartbeat became thunder in their skull, the sound of their own breathing monstrous and inescapable. They clawed until their fingers bled, then licked the wounds for moisture. They chewed stone until their teeth shattered. Some gnawed on their own flesh in delirium. The air grew foul. The stench of sweat, piss, and blood filled the chamber. Weakness gave way to hallucination. Shapes crawled across the walls. Faces leered from the blackness. Whispers grew louder until they were indistinguishable from screams. Some swore they saw angels descending. Others saw demons dragging them into pits of fire. Starvation was slow. At first the body devoured its fat, leaving skin stretched and sagging. Then it turned on muscle, wasting arms and legs until they were nothing but sticks. Bones pressed against skin, ribs rising like a cage, eyes sinking deep into their sockets. The prisoner became a skeleton wrapped in pale parchment, their belly swollen grotesquely even as the rest withered. Death came not with peace but with convulsions. Bodies shook violently, bowels voided in spasms, and teeth ground until jaws cracked. The final breath was shallow, ragged, wheezing in darkness. The corpse slumped where it lay, forgotten, its soul long gone before the body followed. But the tomb did not stay silent. The chambers became haunted by the memory of those who died within. Guards swore they heard scratching behind the walls at night, faint knocks echoing as though the dead still clawed for escape. Masons reported voices murmuring from freshly sealed stone, whispers that begged them to stop, curses that followed them home. Priests claimed the incense was necessary not for purification, but to drive away the souls of the damned that lingered in the crypts. Villagers told stories of cursed tombs unearthed centuries later. When masons cracked open old walls, the remains inside were found frozen in grotesque postures. Arms stretched toward the sealed entrance, mouths open in eternal screams, finger bones worn down to splinters from endless scratching, teeth marks on limbs where flesh had been devoured in hunger. These discoveries only deepened the terror. Children were threatened with tales of the starving tomb. Disobey your parents, and you will be walled alive. Lovers whispered of it as the darkest fate, worse than drowning, worse than fire. For there was no swiftness in it, no spectacle, only silence and slow decay. In monasteries, the practice was sanctified as a holy punishment. Nuns accused of lust, monks accused of heresy, were entombed beneath cloisters. Their muffled cries seeped up through the flagstones of chapels, a grim chorus accompanying chants of salvation. The faithful prayed while the condemned starved below, their prayers mingling with screams no one dared acknowledge. In castles, rebellious knights and traitorous lords were given over to the tomb, their names stricken from records, their bodies bricked away, their families forbidden to mourn them. For all eternity, their punishment was not only death but erasure, forgotten by the living, yet never at rest. Over centuries, fields and forests swallowed these tombs. Travelers stumbled across ruined chapels where walls groaned as though something pressed against them from inside. Peasants plowing fields uncovered strange cavities filled with bones, claw marks gouged deep into stone. Stories spread of cursed places where birds would not sing, where even wolves would not prowl. The tomb was not simply punishment. It was transformation. Those who died within became part of the land's memory, a scar etched into soil and stone. Their suffering lingered, their madness seeped outward, infecting those who drew too near. Even the bravest knights confessed unease when riding past ruins of monasteries known to have entombed their own. And so the tomb endured, through famine, through plague, through centuries of cruelty. The hungry earth always had room for more. The walls always had room for more scratching hands, more hollow eyes, more screams that would never be heard. The tomb of the starving was the cruelest mercy the medieval mind could conceive. A death not by fire or sword, but by hunger, thirst, and silence. A grave dug not in earth but in time itself, where the condemned were not buried but consumed, their bones swallowed by stone, their souls lost in the eternal dark. And when the wind howled through ruined crypts and hollow towers, some swore it carried with it the sound of scratching, the endless, futile clawing of those who had been bricked alive, scratching still, long after their flesh had rotted away. For the tombs never slept. The tombs remembered.